The big, dark villa around him was completely silent as he stood there, still listening for any kind of noise. It couldn't be that easy. There had to be something he missed. But Cole hadn't seen anything. Not outside at the big fence, nor at the window he had climbed through, or here at this big and ornate office he had snuck into. There was no alarm. At least no loud one, his subconscious chimed in. He shook his head and looked around again. Even a silent alarm would have sensors or control panels, and he had seen nothing of that kind either. It would have stuck out to him in this place, he told himself to calm his nerves. Every piece of furniture and decoration here looked old and expensive. There was no room for modern things, which had been the reason why he had come here in the first place. Cole shifted his body and looked around. The guy who normally fenced his halls had given him the tip, and it seemed like he had pointed him at a gold mine. There was so much stuff that made his heart flutter that Cole could hardly keep his hands in check. Ornate baubles, a maybe real gold paperweight. He could even see a bookshelf covering one side of the office, filled with antique books. Yet he kept standing there, listening to the noises. The last thing he needed right now was to start grabbing stuff and then getting surprised by someone inside the house waking up to the noise. He wanted to make sure. Listening intently, he turned around once more. He was the only one making any noise right now. The rest of the building remained quiet. Cole walked over to the bookshelf and started touching the leather-bound backs. How much could he get for one of those? It was hard to tell. There were no titles engraved in the leather, and even if there had been, he wouldn't know what his fence could sell. That, and the fact that they were heavy, stayed his hands. Cole shook his head and continued on, now walking to the big, ornate desk. Questions popped into his mind. What kind of person owned this place? Who liked to live surrounded by such objects? Someone who needed other people's admiration, he thought. Even in the weak light of the moon, he could see all those glittering things neatly arranged on top of the massive wooden desk. Someone who was proud of the riches they had stolen. It would be the smart choice to take from there instead of the bookshelf. His fence would be able to sell stuff like that easily, which meant Cole would get paid as well. He reached the desk and grabbed the first thing he could see. A golden paperweight. It just about fit into his palm. It was far heavier than he had thought, and for the first time that night he felt the rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. This might actually be real, pure gold, his instincts told him. He might have just struck the motherlode. Cole opened the bag he had slung over his shoulder and dropped this thing into it before grabbing all the small writing utensils. He wasn't sure if they would be worth anything, but judging by the rest of the place, the chance that they were was rather high. Cole stuffed pretty much everything into the bag, leaving behind only the sheets of paper he couldn't read in the dark, before he began pulling out the drawers. The first one only held some normal supplies. paper clips, tape, and a few loose batteries. But the second one from the top brought another grin to his face. 3 picture frames, all shimmering in the weak light and feeling far heavier than they should. He pulled them out, one by one, and dropped them into the bag, before suddenly straightening up. It wasn't a noise that had alerted him or movement, but from one moment to the next, Cole felt the hair on the nape of his neck standing straight, then a chill running down his spine. He felt watched, noticed, and that feeling in this situation made sweat break out all over his body. His head shot up as he looked through the dark room. The moon's light seemed brighter in this agitated state, but Cole now felt like the shadows in the corners were much darker for it. He could feel the eyes still lingering on him, watching him, studying his every move. What was going on here? The bag around his shoulder felt heavier than before, while he stared into the room and seconds ticked by. Cole could feel the cold sweat running down his back. He had brought no weapon for self-defense, since having a gun with him would add a whole other level to any charges brought against him. But right now, he really wished he had. For the first time since he had started these break-ins, his instincts told him that he wouldn't be able to run away from his problems. A shadow moved in the far corner of the room, and Cole almost screamed. He was holding onto the desk like a life raft and watched the darkness swirl and form, until suddenly something stepped out of the pitch-black space and into the middle of the room. It wasn't black, but white, neither tall nor deformed. Dressed in a long white nightgown, an old woman stood there, looking him straight in the eyes. Cole could feel his heart almost stopping. She was watching him closely, and showed no hint of fear as he stood there, towering over her, yet feeling so much smaller. A bead of sweat dripped from his cheek and down onto the desk. It sounded so much louder than it should, he thought, and suddenly felt his mind racing. How should he get out of this? Would it be better to run or to threaten? Maybe it would be best to attack the old hag before she could call the police? No, he wouldn't sink that low. Deep inside, he knew he wouldn't be able to strike her. What would his mom say? Or even worse, his daughter? The woman was still staring at him, but hadn't screamed yet or made any other suspicious moves. Her hands were empty. She had come down here without a weapon or even a phone. Had she called for help already? Then why come here at all? Why put herself in a dangerous position? What if he was the kind of man who would beat up old ladies to get away? Still, Cole couldn't move. His fingers were shaking as they were holding onto the edge of the desk, while the woman seemed completely fine. "I think you missed something," he suddenly heard her say, and the sound of that voice made the tremors running through him even worse. Cole couldn't reply. His mind was going blank, while the woman now slowly walked to the side of the room, apparently completely at ease with his presence here. "Third drawer on the right. I think that's what you've come here for, right?" He had trouble swallowing and simply watched as the old woman leisurely walked through the room and ended up at the bookshelf on the side. Her almost ghostly pale hands stroked the backs of some of the books before they came to rest on what he now realized was a skull. A human one. Cole felt another chill, but this time he finally managed to lift his hand off the desk at least.
Third drawer. Take it.
The woman said again, without a single hint of emotion, then turned and looked at him once more.
It's not like I could stop you, right?
That was such a bad lie. He felt it. Something about that woman scared him to his bones. A hand was touching the skull, caressing it almost. And for a split second, he thought he could see her grinning. While his mind was still in turmoil, he suddenly realized that his body had started to move again. Slowly, he sunk down and opened the third drawer on the right. Just like she had told him to. Cole's mind was racing now. Was she seriously telling him to take more of her stuff? Or was it a trap? He couldn't stop his hands as they slowly pulled out the drawer, and in it, he saw a dark wooden box in the low light of the moon.
Very good. Take it.
The old woman ordered. Feeling completely overwhelmed, he felt the smooth surface of the box as he lifted it out and held it up. It wasn't even as big as a shoebox and looked old, almost antique. Someone had taken great care in carving it, he thought, then found a clasp at the edge, but the woman's voice stopped him.
Don't. This is for you and you alone. You understand? Now, get out of here before someone notices something.
Cole felt another chill as the woman's fingers slowly moved over the skull, and he dropped the box into his bag. This was entirely too weird for his taste. He rounded the desk, but made sure to never turn his back on that strange woman who now followed him with her eyes.
Have a good night,
she whispered, almost smiling, and with those words, Cole began to run. Some part of him warned him that she might come after him, that any second now he would hear far too heavy footsteps following him down to the entrance, and something bad would snatch him up before he could escape. But that didn't happen. The house was silent as he ran out the front door. No light had been turned on, nor was anyone screaming after him. He ran and ran, climbed over the high fence surrounding the property, then landed outside in the wooded area and started to run again. What the hell had just happened? He couldn't make heads or tails of it at all. This whole night seemed too strange now. From the tip of his fence to the villa out there, it all just felt off. And why had the woman given him something instead of calling the police? It hadn't happened out of fear. That much was obvious. She hadn't been scared for a single moment during their interaction. Cole could feel the cool air drying his sweat as he ran through the woods and toward the place where his car stood. He needed to get out of here. That was all he could concentrate on. What if that strange woman wasn't the owner of the house? Cole almost stumbled as that thought hit him. He felt a chill in the air. That would make far more sense, right? Maybe she was some kind of maid who hated the real owner of the house. If she was the one who had tipped off his fence, she would be pleased if he stole as much from the villa as he could. It would also mean no one would be coming after him. at least for now. Cole felt his heart racing as he continued to run through the dark woods. The only problem with that theory was that his profit would shrink as well. If his fence had to pay another person, that would cut into any money Cole would get. Well, judging by the weight of the bag around his shoulder, he didn't really mind that much. He had made out like a bandit tonight, and if he lost a bit of money but could be sure no one would identify him, that was a fair deal. Cole jumped over some roots on the ground and finally reached the edge of the woods where his car stood. What he got tonight would turn into his nest egg. He would do whatever he could to make sure his daughter would never go hungry again, no matter what happened to him. And for that, his normal job just wasn't enough. He jumped into the car and drove off, back to the city. Cole didn't turn the radio on as he drove along the dark road and instead tried to guess how much money he would get for the stuff he had taken. It should be a few grand, right? At least enough to cover rent and food for a few months if he lost his job again. Well, not ideal, but it was a start. He sent his fence a message to open a shop for him as he reached the center of the city. Then, not even 20 minutes later, he stopped at the old repair business with only one burning light. Cole could still feel the chill in the air as he left the car, walked down the 3 steps, and entered the dilapidated shop without another soul seeing him. The man waiting at the counter looked tired, like he'd just woken up, and somehow that made Cole grin.
Everything okay?
He heard the man say, nodded in response, and put the bag on the counter. The loud thud made the old man smile as well. Together, they went through the stuff he had taken. The gold weight, the pens, the picture frames, and with every piece, Cole's mood soured more. The old man looked disappointed, shook his head at almost everything, but still put the stuff to the side.
I'll call around,
he promised, now looking Cole directly in the eyes.
But I can't promise much. If you come back tomorrow, I can tell you exactly how much I'll be able to get.
With a loud sigh, Cole picked up the bag, then stopped as he felt something else in there. The wooden box, the one the old woman had told him to take. He pulled it out and could immediately see the man's eyes growing wide. Staggering back, he raised a hand, and suddenly his demeanor completely changed.
I'll give you 4 grand for the stuff here. Just take that and leave.
Cole looked at him, not knowing what was going on, but the old man already reached for something behind the counter, pulled out a bundle of cash and almost threw it at him. There was fear in his eyes. Panic. Cole let the box fall into the bag again, pulled it off the counter, and picked up the bundle of bills by his feet. The old man didn't say another word, just stared at him with this terrified expression. 4 grand. It was less than he had hoped for, but more than he probably would have gotten.
What's in that box?
Cole asked, after he had dumped the cash into his bag, but the old man simply shook his head.
She showed it to you, right? It's meant for you, not for me. Just leave, please.
Shaking his head, he turned away, unsure what the old man had been playing at, but knowing that he wouldn't get any more answers out of the guy anyway. He had the money and had gotten away with it. That was all that should matter, right? Yet Cole couldn't shake that dreadful feeling in the back of his mind. Something was off here. With a yawn, he reached his car, hopped in, and drove off. Well, whatever it wasn't like he could do anything about it right now. He was tired and exhausted, and those interactions had left a bad taste in his mouth. What he could do right now was go home, to his mum's place, where his daughter was sleeping already. He put the bag down into the footwell of the passenger side to keep it out of sight, then drove along the almost empty street, heading to the house he had been born in. Tonight, he hoped his mum would be asleep as well. The last thing he needed right now was another lecture about being a good dad. As if anyone could teach him in that regard. He had taken care of her for 3 years completely on his own, before his mother had intervened. Yeah, living with her made things easier. But that didn't mean he was a bad dad. There was nothing in this world he wouldn't do for his daughter, which already put him miles ahead of his own father. Cole heard himself grumbling and felt his fingers bouncing on the steering wheel. He was getting angry for nothing again, he realized, then took a deep breath and tried to put on a smile. Everything would be all right. With another 4K in his pocket, he could call this a success already. Slowly, but surely, he would get them all to a better place. Just a few more of these outings before he could feel safe. He left the city behind and found the suburbs completely dark and quiet. Just like it should be, he thought. A nice place should be like that once night fell. Cole parked his car in front of the house, which looked just as dark as the rest, turned off the engine, and took the bag with him. If he hurried, he would get around 4 hours of sleep before having to wake up again and head to his day job. He grumbled, then took out his keys and opened the door. The money he would stash in his room for now, Cole thought to himself. Maybe one day he could put it into some kind of account, somewhere only his daughter would have access to. But that was still a long way away. Cole walked into the living room and then stopped immediately. He could see a figure sitting in the old comfy chair, and for a moment he was reminded of the old woman in the villa. Sweat was breaking out all over his body, and his heart almost stopped. He looked more closely, and the tension left him suddenly. There, on a comfy chair, was his mother and daughter, rolled up with a blanket draped over them, sleeping soundly. Cole smiled and quietly walked into the kitchen, where he could turn on a light without waking them up. At least, he had thought he could. Instead of silence, he now heard rustling from the living room, then footsteps coming toward him. His mother had woken up. Shit. Cole took a glass out of the cupboard and filled it with water while he waited for her to reach the kitchen. He already knew what she would say, but he was too tired to argue tonight. All he wanted right now was to go to bed and sleep for a few hours. But that wouldn't be possible, would it? The door in his back opened, and he could already hear her breathing.
It's late,
she said, and the tone of her voice reminded him of all the arguments they had had when he was a 16-year-old boy. I'll be up at 6 again. You know, sometimes you just need to stay longer at work. Nothing I can do about it. Cole already knew that there was no way she would believe him. that she had an idea of what he had been up to those past few weeks.
Don't bullshit me, Cole.
She simply replied, as he heard her footsteps stop at the counter where he had put the bag.
She had a nightmare and couldn't find you. It's important you're here too, you know?
The tone, this accusation, made his blood almost boil. Of course he knew. It wasn't like he was doing what he was doing for fun. But he needed to get the money. And quickly at that. There were no golden opportunities around here. No way for someone like him to give his daughter a better life. Not anymore, at least. Still, he swallowed his anger, took a sip of water, and only then replied,
I'm so sorry. And I'm thankful for what you're doing for me, for us, but it's necessary. If anything were to happen to me.
The sound of someone pulling at a zipper stopped him, and he whirled around to see his mother standing there, opening up the bag. Cole raised a hand, but realized that he was too late anyway. She would find out about it one way or another. He watched as her eyes grew wide and she pulled out the bundle of bills.
What did you do?
Cole just shook his head.
What did you do, Cole?
She repeated. He didn't want to say it. But maybe right now was the best chance he would ever get. She couldn't scream at him very well, with his daughter sleeping in the next room over.
It's just a job. Not a legal one, but I didn't hurt anybody.
He admitted, and watched his mother shake her head, still in disbelief. She dropped a bundle of bills onto the counter, then pulled out the next thing. The wooden box. The one his fence had been so afraid of. Cole felt a chill as he saw it once more.
And what's that?
His mother was holding it up into the light, turning it around again and again until she found the clasp.
I have absolutely no idea. Got that one as a bonus.
He watched her put it down, then slowly dragging her fingers over the lid. Something inside of him screamed, but his exhausted mind was happy that his mother had stopped her nagging. Right now, she was completely entranced by the box.
What's in it?
His mother asked without looking at him at all. She sounded strange, almost giddy. Cole couldn't answer, and his own happiness seemed to vanish. He raised one hand and took a step toward her, then stopped as he saw her fingers touch the clasp. This was bad, the voice inside him screamed again. His fence had been scared, and even a strange woman in the house had stopped him when he had wanted to take a look. Don't let her open it, his instincts howled in his mind. What if it all had been planned? A sick joke or an experiment by the woman in the house? She had given the fence the tip to send him there. Then, whatever was in the box was bad news.
Stop!
Cole hissed, but his mother's finger already touched the clasp, and with a click, the small mechanism sprung open. He could feel time stopping as he watched the lid vibrate, then fly back. Black smoke streamed out of the box, covered his mother in an instant, and then filled the whole kitchen in the next. The light above was snuffed out, it felt like, and Cole could hear himself screaming in the darkness. He touched the counter at his side, making sure that it was still there, then listened for his mother's coughs. She was up ahead, 2 steps away if he remembered right, but the sounds coming from her seemed much farther away. He could hear her screaming in horror, shot forward, but found a spot where she had stood, now empty. Something growled in the black, smoke-filled darkness surrounding him. It wasn't a sound produced by a human, his mind warned him. Then there was another scream, and Cole knew exactly who it had come from. His mum was somewhere around here, shouting in pain and fear. He needed to... No. His daughter. He needed to make sure she was okay. Nothing else was as important. Cole turned and ran in the direction where he thought the door was. The black smoke surrounding him filled every inch of the room. It was as if he was caught in complete darkness, but he still was inside the kitchen, he told himself. At least he hoped he was. His mother screamed again and cried out in pain, but he couldn't turn or look for her. Instead, he ran for the door, hit the small table with his hip, and heard his own cry in the darkness. Things were moving around him. He could feel it. It was the same sensation as back in the villa with the old woman. His instincts were going haywire. Parts of him wanted to just drop and hide, but Cole knew that that wouldn't do. His shoulder hit the door with a loud bang as he stumbled out into the dark part of the house that wasn't filled with smoke. At least not yet. Cole could see the black stuff immediately streaming out of the open door behind him, shooting up to the ceiling and extinguishing any kind of light. It would take the smoke more than a few seconds, he knew. His daughter was still balled up on the comfy chair, sleeping with a thin blanket draped over her body as the stuff was filling in the room. He had to do something. Cole screamed, and his shout echoed from the walls as he rushed forward. His daughter's head shot up. The fear in her eyes broke his heart. She could see it as well, he knew. The black smoke coming out of the kitchen behind him, filling up the room. He just hoped she wouldn't be able to hear the things in there that were already following him. Cole ran forward, grabbed hold of her hand and pulled her out of the chair in a single motion. Black smoke was already coming down from the ceiling. No more light was getting through the upper parts of the windows. In a second, his head would be submerged again as well. He ducked and ran, carrying his daughter with him, and now started to cry. They needed to get out of there, leave the house behind. Cole rushed along toward the main entrance. The smoke was coming down on him. He could hardly see the lowest part of the door anymore. Just 10 steps to go, he told himself, then felt his daughter's finger digging into his shoulder as her head disappeared in the black stuff. Whatever was in there, hiding in the darkness, was still coming after him. He needed to get out of here. Cole continued to run and felt his vision go dark, no matter how low he got. It was speeding up, filling the rooms more quickly now. And in the darkness, he could hear them. Footsteps coming after him. It sounded like hooves. Cole held his daughter tight as the smoke almost swallowed her cries. Her voice was so quiet, so far away. The light disappeared around him, but Cole didn't stop. He knew that he needed to keep going. There was no stopping now. Behind him, the hooves were coming closer. He thought he could hear them growling in the darkness. His left shoulder suddenly hit the front door with a loud bang, and his daughter's cry cut through the black smoke. Cole's hand shot to the handle and ripped it open just as his baby's voice rang out once more. She was howling in fear. Something touched his back. The moment Cole felt it, he knew that he was done for. This hand that grabbed him was far bigger than a human's. Its fingers felt cold, and the growl now reaching his ears sounded so much louder than before. He knew he wouldn't be able to see it, even if he turned around. There was only one thing he could still do. He felt his daughter's finger on his other shoulder and held her tight for another moment. The big hand was pulling him back, and he felt his feet sliding backward. Cole grabbed his daughter and shook her fingers off his collar. He had wanted to tell her something, he thought. At least to say goodbye. But that wasn't possible anymore. The smoke would just swallow his voice. Without another second's hesitation, he pushed her off, out of the open door, as the big hand yanked him back and he lost his balance. Cole heard her, screaming, far away. He was falling backward, but his foot still found the door, and he kicked it shut. They wouldn't leave either. The smoke and everything in it would stay inside. He felt pain as the giant hand yanked at his shoulder, and now Cole allowed himself to scream. It was dragging him back into the darkness, and his cries were snuffed out by the smoke that was now swallowing everything.